governor, and commissioners. Century is overassessed. Let's start with expenses versus declining income. If we crash the income 60%, like what has happened, and expenses remain the same dollar amount, then expenses will become 138% of income, not 45%. Or if expenses remain fixed at 50% and 50% decline with income, then expenses will become 96% of income, not 45%. Or if expenses remain fixed 25% and 75% decline with income, then expenses will become 76% of income, not 45%. So I ask you, are 76 to 96% expenses reasonable when income has crashed 60%? Yes, and those expense factors should be expected. Inflation calculator. Century expenses were $430,000 in 2008, and if they are inflated at 5%, they will be $735,000 in 2019. Actually, Century's expenses were $731,000 for 2019, or right in line with inflation. The chart shows Century expenses do not vary with income, but have inflated at a straight line rate of 4.45%.
Century is Dickinson's only apartment that remains above its 2018 assessment, the only one. Century's expenses never go below 54% to 55%, except during the boom period. Century's expenses are a function of cost, not income. So to use an arbitrary 45% expense factor in a bust market, when it's closer to 76 to 96%, is not only wrong, but it's unreasonable and illogical. This chart shows the income, expenses, and net per unit at Century for the last 15 years. The peak was 2014. In 2014, Century produced $1,315 per unit with 35% expenses. In 2019, Century produced just $545 per unit with 93% expenses. Think of it as raising a steer. Just because the price of the steer goes down does not mean the cost to raise that steer goes down. The same is true with Century Apartments. The assessor's 1-minute income approach. The assessor takes the income and uses 45% expenses and caps the net at 6.5% for a value of $6.6 million. The problem is expenses are not 45%. And I question the assessor's 6.5 cap rate for 40-year-old apartments in a bust market. 8 to 10% is more appropriate. Plus, expenses cost more in 2019 than they did in 2008. Yet the assessor has expenses $79,000 less in 2019 than they were in 2008 with similar income. The assessor also used the cost approach for his market value. Yet the cost approach does not apply to 40-year-old apartments. Second, the assessor wants you to believe the difference between a normal market and a below market condition is only 6.3%. How about 60 or 70%? All accepted appraisal methods point to a value of $3.5 million for Century Apartments. This chart shows how and when the assessor missed the turn in the market. The red line shows the corrections that have been made so far, and we need just one more at $3.5 million to be back on track. Quickly, if one takes the 5.9 GIM from the comparable sales and multiplies it by staff's effective gross income, one gets $4.3 million, not $5.2 million. That's almost $1 million error. In 2017, Stark County abated Century's value by about $3.9 million, a 45% reduction. And in 2018, the state reduced Century by about $2.8 million to $5.1 million, or a 35% reduction. If the assessor's mass cost approach was wrong in 2017 and 2018 for Century, why would it be right in 2019? It wouldn't. Century's market value of $3.5 million is supported by not only the last two reductions, but the income approach, comparable sales, and independent appraisals. I ask you therefore to please correct Century to its appraised value of $3.5 million. Thank you. Any questions?